When a 21-year-old Canadian woman went missing from LA's notorious Cecil Hotel, everyone suspected the worst. After she'd been missing a few weeks, the LAPD released surveillance footage from the hotel's elevator that was extremely eerie and began to make the public wonder if something unexplainable had happened to her. When it was discovered that the young woman's body had been submerged for 2 weeks in one of the hotel's water tanks, providing water to residents' showers and even a restaurant, the true horror of the situation came to light. But when few questions were able to be answered by law enforcement, speculation ran wild. Was this woman the victim of a predator? Did she commit suicide on her trip to California? Did she succumb to the clutches of an evil entity? You're listening to Creep It Real. Join us as we discuss the circumstances surrounding the tragic death of Elisa Lam.
Creep It Real is a weekly podcast where we present our theories of the subjects we cover based on our interest and research. Some material may be graphic and disturbing, so proceed with caution.
I'm chronically stuffy. I don't know what it is. I'm just always stuffy.
Well, I think it's the dog sleeping in your bed.
Probably.
Which I think you were going to stop doing.
Well, yeah.
It doesn't work out that well, does it? We started watching Married with Children the other night.
I love that show.
I was like, we're both like, they said stuff. It wasn't so censored.
PC?
Yeah. It's just so, and it's so funny. I mean, there are aspects of it that kind of annoy me a little. Like, I always am like, why does he not want to touch his wife?
I know.
But I know Peter's like, it's the joke. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Still, it's freaking great. I'm like, that and King of the Hill have been
King of the Hill is
so
amazing.
Good right now. I know. They can withstand any, I mean, it's been like 20 years since, it's been like 20 years since.
That's insane.
Yeah. Well, not King of the Hill, but
yeah,
the other one.
Well, gosh, is Married with Children older than that?
It started in 87 and ended in 97.
Yep. Wow.
Yeah, there would just never be anything like that nowadays. So anyway.
Yeah.
Those good old TV days.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah.
Anyway. So, hello, everybody.
Hi. Hello.
Hey guys, we're here again.
Not that we hate being here, but we're here.
Okay, yeah, it's Creep It Real. This is Ashley. There's Shy over there, and we're covering something that I have been putting off for a long time because it seems to be covered to death. But,
right.
We wanted to give our own perspective on Elisa Lam's death or murder, or whatever you want to think, but we're just going to say that the death of Elisa Lam. So let's just get into it. I mean,
there's not much to say about it except for it is strange.
Right. It's definitely something that people think is creepy. I mean, most people, whenever they hear about it, they're like, oh, the creepy surveillance footage, which definitely is true.
But that's what people focus on.
Right.
And they want to blame supernatural. So
right. Yeah. So it looks creepy for sure.
Yeah.
But it's always going to be really creepy when you know what the end result was. So
right.
Let's get a little summary of what goes on, and then we'll kind of dive into picking it apart. So Elisa Lam was a 21-year-old young woman. She was born in Vancouver, Canada in April of 1991. She was such a little baby, first of all.
I'm older than her. Yeah.
That's my little brother's age. So anyway, her parents were immigrants to Canada from Hong Kong, and they ran a restaurant in a town just outside Vancouver called Barnaby in Canada. And she had attended the University of British Columbia, but had taken off in 2013. According to the school's records, she had not registered that January for that semester of school. If you read her blog or browse her Tumblr, you will get a pretty clear picture on how she viewed herself. She was very interested in fashion, literature, writing, being creative in general. She was very open about her mental health status, that she had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and also the medications that she was prescribed, her bouts of depressive episodes that she went through, and she was just super honest and very relatable to just about anybody, I would say, nowadays. Well, I think we're all kind of open about the fact that we generally all have some sort of, mental issues that we're all dealing with at some point or another. So, anyway,
I thought it was strange her family wanted to keep her mental illness a secret, even though she was complete opposite and wrote about it
I'm sure
on
they
her
never
blogs.
I bet you they never really saw that.
Oh, no. Yeah.
And, I know for a lot of people there is a stigma behind having mental health issues, but, when it comes down to it, we all have something. I think we're all on some spectrum of something, and so, the more that we just are open about it, the more I feel like it'll be less stigmatized. So, unfortunately, I guess for us, it doesn't really matter or for Elisa, it doesn't really matter necessarily because we don't really personally, I guess, deserve any answers from her parents. But as far as like what actually happened here, it would definitely help if we knew a little more in depth about what was going on.
Right.
Yeah. And as bizarre and creepy as the details are that surround her death, she deserves for us to take an honest and objective look at the fact and what might have happened to her, which is why we decided to cover this case. So now we're just going to move on to some of the deets here. So, as we just said, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression and was prescribed 4, maybe more medications, but the 4 main medications were Wellbutrin, Lamictal, Seroquel, and Effexor.
And none of these have any sort of special half-lives or anything like that, I read. Symptoms, side effects are pretty typical with any sort of depression medication. A lot of increased suicide attempts, even though her family claims that she had never had suicidal tendencies anyway.
I hate to say it, but it seems like everybody's family says that. Nobody's family is going to unless somebody's super.
Yeah. You look at the history of suicides, and they were such a happy person. They were so personable.
Right.
They loved life, and then
because
the next thing you know,
something altogether different is going on in their mind. So I guess it's
right.
not always really open. They're not really open about their suicidal ideations.
So we'll get into because they found 7 medications in her, right, at the time of death.
Yeah. Some were not prescription. Some were just over the counter. But also some of the over the counter stuff can interact with the prescribed stuff for negative side effects for sure.
So if you take a look at her blog, she had named it the Ethereal Fields, which I kind of like that name. And at one point she said that she was abandoning her blog and moving over to Tumblr.
Yeah.
So,
but she kind of started writing in it again.
Yeah.
So she kind of just went back and forth. I know that a year before this event happened where a year before her death, in January of 2012, she made a post about how she had relapsed and it caused her to drop a number of her classes and left her feeling directionless and lost. I think Shai, you said that at the time her sleep schedule just got totally out of whack.
She was, complete reverse of what a normal human sleep schedule would be if she would sleep at all. So she has the pressures of academics, social life, and I'm not trying to be, what's the word, prejudice? I don't know. Anyway, coming from, her family's Asian, and they have a history of really pushing academics and being the perfect student. So a lot of pressure maybe from that side.
I'm sure. As much as it might sound like it's generalizing or whatever. That is a traditionally cultural stereotyping. That is definitely a well-known stereotype within Asian culture. So it's not, I don't think anybody is going to hear that and be like, what? I never. It's no, it happens. So, and that definitely was some pressures that I think she was feeling for sure. And cause she beat herself up all the time on her blog about how she was lazy and directionless. And, she said she was mentally and physically lazy, and she just would chide herself constantly about how disappointed she was in herself. And, she was so young. Like,
oh, I know.
you're so young. You have so much time to like figure out what you want to do and get yourself straightened out. Sometimes it's not, it's just, I guess that's unfortunate as far as what pressures that she had put on her or what she put on herself probably didn't help with her anxiety, depression, everything. It probably just exacerbated it terribly because yeah, I mean, you're 21. You could maybe just not take a traditional route and go straight through college and, try to figure out what you might be interested in before you start classes, but instead it was just like, I'm a failure, I'm lazy. Oh, and that's the other thing is that it seemed that she had stopped working out. She had said she
Yeah.
always ran track and field in high school. And so she had stopped that when she got to college. Everybody knows what it's like when you move out. I know. I was like, well, the grocery store trips consist of me getting everything I haven't been able to eat for the past 18 years. And I was just
beer.
eating junk food. Like junk. Well, I was too young, but just junk, like eating just trash. And
Totino's pizzas and Cheese Whiz.
yeah, it's just like, woohoo.
It's actually really good.
So that sounds so bad right now, but I'll give it to you. So
I thought there was an ominous quote that she used as an epigraph on her blog. It was quoting Chuck Palahniuk. Is that how you say his name?
Yes, I think
okay.
so.
You're always haunted by the idea you're wasting your life.
Yeah.
So
which right, and I mean it's just so sad to think that that's what she wanted to use as like the tagline of her blog,
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like just live in the moment, please.
Right. Yeah.
just
day by day.
It's just so sad. There was another quote that I read on there that totally just disturbed me. I mean, this case is pretty dark, pretty depressing. I don't think that anybody can say that's not the case, but what was it? It was
I know what you're talking about.
Oh, something about how it was like in the end we're all just some like a story or something, and I was like, oh gosh, I feel terrible. It almost makes me feel bad doing this case. It's like, oh, okay. I mean, because I don't want her to. I wouldn't, I wouldn't want her to just feel like a story. But like I said, she was a very humorous, and it seemed like she was just a lovely person in general. But I don't really know that I saw a ton about any relationships with friends or anything that she had.
There wasn't if any, there wasn't any love interest stuff as well.
There was one occasion where I know one week she was talking about how everybody that she thought cared about her had abandoned her. And then in the following week, she was like, everything's turned around. I met somebody. We've talked all night long. And I'm sure they did. And I'm sure that was like a really awesome experience for her. But I don't think it quite was what she thought it was. Because a few days later, she said something about, things just being crap and how the only thing that makes life worth living, I think, something along those lines, the only thing that makes life worth living is love. And I just remember being that age and just being, like that was all you could ever think about. I mean, and maybe it's all you ever think about always, unless, or maybe it is. I mean, maybe that's true. I don't know. Because I mean, how do I know? How do I know if I wouldn't still be doing it right now if I didn't have Peter, my husband?
Yeah. Well, and I was actually reading something about that the other day, how people are never truly loners. Like humans need interaction and they need someone. And if that's just one person, so be it. But humans love to be loved, and it's true. Right. But unless you're Keanu Reeves, I guess he's a single Pringle forever.
Poor guy. Well, didn't his wife die in childbirth?
I don't know.
Something terrible.
Now I feel like a jerk.
He is the. I mean, everybody knows the whole sad Keanu meme.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think he's had just some seriously terrible stuff happen to him in his life, and I think, honestly might be one of the most nice, kind human beings in the world.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe he's just to the point where he's like, I can't love ever again. He's like his character on what are those movies that he was on? He did 2 of them where they killed his dog.
Oh,
it's so good. John Wick?
John Wick, yeah. I never saw them, but
I really liked them. They were so good. Yeah, okay. So back to the story.
leading up to this trip.
Okay. Also about her blog, crap, what was I about to say? Well, forgot it. So, okay, moving on. So, by all account, Elisa booked a trip to California, and it was fairly impromptu. I don't know that she was really planning this out for any amount of time.
I have my theories about this whole trip too, so
Okay.
we'll get those later. But
okay. Yeah, so some may say that this is a sign that she was in the middle of a manic episode. Was that your theory?
Yeah, that's my theory, that it was like the beginning and like the climb of this manic episode, because impulsive behavior and like grandiose behavior is a huge sign of a upswing of a manic episode.
Well, and it reminds me of the Magdalena Zook case that we covered, where she booked a trip kind of last minute and ended up having to go alone because of that. But anyway, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it pans out here. Okay. Well, she traveled alone. She took the Amtrak from Canada to San Diego, which I didn't even know that was possible. But that's kind of cool.
Neither did I.
And once there, she went to the zoo where she took some pictures and posted them to social media. So, she arrived and she looked to be having a good time by herself.
Yeah. Well, she also stated that she hadn't done anything out of the ordinary while her time in like San Diego, whatnot. But then again, she was like, well, I do what I want, but when you're in San Diego, I don't know what you would do, but it just seems like she's not taking full advantage of the trip.
Okay. Well, let's see what else she does. So she arrives in LA on January 26th, and I don't know where she stayed up until this point, but 2 days after that is when she checked into the Cecil Hotel. And the Cecil Hotel, if you have never heard of it, it is in the middle of LA's Skid Row and has a pretty sordid history itself.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if she knew that she was going to this hotel and maybe was doing it in the way that some of us creeps may go and like, ooh, I'm going to go to this creepy hotel and see what happens. Or if she was booking it because it had since changed its name to the Stay on Main. Mm-hmm. And anyway, I don't know if she knew that or if she thought she was going to some little boutique hotel and, it ended up being something altogether different. The hotel itself was built in 1927 and it was hit hard by the Great Depression and became known as a hotel for transients. Like I said, it's located near downtown LA's Skid Row, which contains one of the largest stable populations of homeless people in the United States. That's between 5,000 and 8,000 homeless individuals that consistently stay in that area. That's crazy. That's a ton.
That's thousands more people than the town I grew up in's full population. Like, no joke.
Oh my gosh. Oh Lord. So the term Skid Row comes from an old logging term, and it used to describe a place or a street in the town where people would gather that had nothing to do, had no money. It was basically just a depressed street. So I had never known. I've always heard about Skid Row, but I never knew what it was, anything like that. So just to give you a little information on it. I don't want to make it out to be I don't know how to, it is a negative. I mean, it's negative that there are that many homeless people, but I don't want that to make them all out to be sketchy criminal types, because we all know that a lot of the homeless population consists of people that have mental illnesses that have gone untreated, who fell on hard times and had nobody there to help pull them out. Like, right. I would have been there perhaps in my life if I didn't have family that was able to help me out in times of need. So, and I think, I want to emphasize that I'm not trying to act as though everybody that lives around this area is so dangerous that she for sure was murdered by somebody there or something like that. But it is possible that with the drug use and the criminal activity that does lend itself to that area in general, that, it is a little sketchy.
Like at the time of her stay there too, there was a few registered sex offenders living in the hotel as residents.
Right. So yeah, I mean, that's never a good thing, I would say. Unless you're just one of those people that got charged as being a sexual offender because you worked at like a sex shop in a place that doesn't allow it or something. Other than that,
Or like you got caught peeing in public. I don't know.
yes, or peeing in public, or even having sex in your car, something like that.
Yeah.
There are a few sexual offenders out there who I would say probably don't deserve the title, but the vast majority of them are trashy ass creeps who, you know, can't stop taking pictures of people in bathrooms and stuff, and worse, as we know.
Which which actually a hotel guest reported being spied on while she was in the shower through a vent.
Oh my
in the
gosh!
Cecil Hotel.
Well, like,
yeah, I mean, it gets worse too. This hotel is a trash can.
Yeah,
a giant trash can.
So probably the most infamous unsolved murder in LA, I would say maybe even the country, maybe.
Man, yeah.
Is the Black Dahlia, Elizabeth Short, who had reportedly been at the Cecil Hotel's bar just before her murder, her terrible murder. That, I mean, we're not covering the Black Dahlia today, so I'm not really going to go into it, but it was brutal, and it is unsolved to this day. That was in 1947 that happened.
Right.
In 1964, there was a lady they called the Pigeon Lady of Pershing Square.
All I can think of is the Pigeon Lady from Home Alone 2, Lost in New York.
I'm like, what a nickname. I mean,
okay, it's not funny, Ashley.
Oh, true. That's true. So her name was Goldie Osgood, and she was a retired phone operator and a longtime resident at the Cecil. She was unfortunately found raped, stabbed, and beaten to death in her room at the hotel. And that is another murder that is still unsolved to this day. Obviously terrible.
I mean, the hotel's history, I mean, there was like 16 unnatural deaths reported here, right? So many suicides.
Yeah.
One guest jumped out of the 15th floor and landed on a pedestrian on the street,
right,
killing that person as well. Some lady gave birth and threw her baby out the window.
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh. That lady that jumped and landed on the guy, so her and her husband had been getting in a fight, and it was audible to other people that around in rooms around them, and then he supposedly left the room, and she jumped out the window and landed on that guy, but I'm like, who even knows? That could have been a murder, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, so
True.
I mean, yeah, there have been a butt ton of suicides or supposed suicides, but like some of these are very questionable, like that one where it's like maybe it was a murder.
Right.
In the 1980s, Shia's boyfriend halitosis Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, he was, according to the hotel clerk that worked there at the time, a resident for a few weeks, and it was in the middle of a killing spree, one of his killing sprees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is how, just on top of things, this hotel was. He would go murder people, dump his bloody clothes in the dumpster outside the hotel, and walk up to his room half naked.
Yeah.
And nobody cared. I mean, this is downtown LA, right? Like, I guess that's pretty normal. I don't know.
Maybe they
never been to LA.
Like we said, maybe the area made it a little less. They made everybody a little less likely to question anybody because it's just there's maybe crazy shit going around every day. There's somebody running around.
That's
naked
why he chose the hotel because it had unmitigated chaos, and he liked the history of it because he's a wackadoo.
Oh yeah.
And
okay, so that's cool.
Then there was that Jack Unterweger, man,
yeah.
the Austrian, serial killer. He would take call girls up to his room and strangle them to death with their bra. And that's why you should just go braless. I mean,
yeah, I totally agree on that. I 100% agree.
Third Love, sponsor us. Thank you. Anyway, he actually chose the hotel to kill there too because of the connection to Richard Ramirez.
Yeah, paying homage to him, which, you know, it's like, whatever. I mean, on one hand, I can see some people going and just staying there for that reason, but to then kill people on top of it, you know, you're a piece of trash. Oh, but he was actually convicted in Austria of those crimes that he committed in America, and he actually hung himself shortly after he was convicted, so took care of that. Ew. Yeah, whatever.
A real kind of a creepy quote from a journalist who spent a night in the hotel after Elisa's death says, "The Cecil will reveal to you whatever it is you're a fugitive from."
Oh.
Like, Ooh.
Well, so what does that mean about him, I wonder?
Yeah, what skeletons does he have in his closet?
That's very strange. So let me see. Well, there were a bajillion supposed suicides. So many that by 1960, the hotel began to be called colloquially amongst its residents the Suicide instead of the Cecil, which I'm like, well, that sure makes me want to go live there. That's not fun. In 2007, it was actually bought by some new owners who began a renovation, and half of the hotel remains permanent affordable housing for people who live there long term. That it was required by law that the hotel, even though they were renovating it, they could only renovate half of it. So there are separate floors that they have named the Stay on Main, which are supposedly this boutique hotel, and then other floors have permanent residents on them.
It's such a strange dynamic.
Right. And so it's totally separate except for the elevator. So the elevator, you could have residents and just guests for the hotel in the same elevator at the same time, which, would probably be fine under most circumstances. But if there's some sort of predator or somebody in the middle of a, psychiatric episode, maybe that would make them more, susceptible to something untoward going on. Like we said, we don't really know if Elisa knew the hotel's past and all the information about it before she stayed there. But she did book her room online for the 26th, and it was for a shared room for 3 days. So she was supposed to be in a shared room from January 26th and check out on the 31st of January. So the shared room is kind of like a hostel situation where it would be truly living my worst nightmare.
Right? Like, that would be the worst form of hell ever.
I know. Like, oh man, having to sleep in a room with strangers and all that sounds, who knows who it is? Like, that just sounds like for me, I'm like, give me my space. I am going to just die. Well,
I want to poop in peace.
Yeah, really, I couldn't even poop in front of my husband for a while. So thinking about strangers, no way. I once dated somebody who would make, so they would make me.
Here we are talking about poop. They would have to do it.
They would make me stand on the balcony.
What?
When they went to the bathroom.
No.
Yes. Okay. It was dramatic.
Oh gosh.
So, okay. But back to Elisa, yet again, we are getting off track here. After 2 days of Elisa staying at the hotel with the shared roommate situation, her roommates complained to the hotel about what the hotel's lawyers now describe as quote unquote certain odd behavior, and Elisa was transferred into her own room. And she never slept in that room because she ended up dying before she ever could. But that said, I still don't even understand or know really the specifics of what this certain odd behavior was.
Right.
Because
that would be really helpful to know.
Exactly. It's some of the last people to have interacted with her. Obviously, if they complained, it had to have been something. What it was, I don't know. She could have been just being kind of talking to herself, being angry or aggressive. She could have been trying to steal from them. There's a million freaking possibilities, but so that's all they've said. And also the other possibility that, I just have to throw out as being, devil's advocate or whatever, that maybe they just wanted the room to themselves also. Granted, there are some reasons why she probably was acting strange that we'll continue to talk about, but maybe they had that room to themselves for a few days and then she came in and was kind of annoying and they wanted her out and they could have complained about it. We just don't really know what the actual circumstances are. Who knows? And were those people interviewed by the police? I don't even know if I could verify that at all.
I couldn't find anything on it.
Yeah, neither could I. So who even knows if they did?
It is the LAPD.
Yeah, so we already know it's the LAPD. If we have, I know we have a bunch of listeners in that area, so I'm like, if any of you are cops, I apologize. I'm sure you're the exception, but y'all have a history of some shady ass business, and also at this time there was this whole ordeal going. At this very same time, there was this whole ordeal going on where a cop had gone on a shooting rampage, and it was taking a lot of manpower of the LAPDs to get this situation under control. So I don't really know how much time they dedicated to looking into this case. It's kind of like, it's kind of like Lauren Agee, where it's like, we don't want to make a big to-do about it. We're just, can we just get this done and over with and shut? They look better if they close cases fast. I don't know. At that point, she had contacted her parents every single day. So, whatever her mental state was, from the 26th until the 31st, she had contacted her parents every single day, told them what she was doing, and just called them to check in on them. But on the 31st, that was the first day that she did not contact them.
They just reported her saying that she was happy. She kept saying she was happy, she was fine.
And also, I wonder how much like cognitive dissonance was there where they didn't want to think she was acting strangely because they don't really want to give any, I guess, more thought to her having mental health issues, or maybe she was being totally normal, or maybe they were just like, oh, she seems really happy, but they didn't want to think like she's manic.
Well,
happy,
that's like one of the things I was reading on like a manic episode is people will have almost a feeling of euphoria and report to be extremely happy. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, geez, I'm like, sometimes I feel that. I have felt
like,
that.
Am I happy or just manic today? I don't know. What is wrong with
gosh. So she had supposedly been scheduled to head to Santa Cruz whenever she checked out of the Cecil, though I never found anything saying if she had booked any further accommodations or had even a ticket, a bus pass or anything. So I don't know if there was actual set in stone plans or not on that regard. But the day that the 31st, when her parents did not get a call from her, they contacted police to report it because she had been in such close contact with them that one day's absence of a call made them concerned. So the hotel staff said that they saw her that day and reported that she was alone. I mean, like I have thought to myself a million times about this. I'm sure that's true that they saw her alone. Obviously, they weren't by her, like the hotel staff wasn't by her side for this entire duration of the day, considering that she ended up in a water tank. So it's possible someone else could have been with her at any other point, but it was taken by police as like she was alone. That's it. There was really nobody else that we need to be looking for because she was alone. And it's like, she may not have been alone. Obviously, she wouldn't have gotten in that water tank had y'all been watching her. Not that she needed to be
babysat.
Not that they were responsible for babysitting Elisa, but you can't make that statement in such surety whenever it's possible. There's a million opportunities for her to come in contact with somebody else. I just think that's mildly irritating to me that that's how it went. But anyway, so she visited a nearby bookstore
called The Last Bookstore.
Right, which God, I mean, it's just there's so many little ominous things here.
There's so many little weird things, isn't there?
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit too. Just some little strange instances, but the manager's name was Katie Orphan. She was one of the only people to remember seeing Elisa out and about before her death. And she said that she was very outgoing, very lively, very friendly, and that she purchased gifts to take home to her family. She talked to Katie about what books that she was getting and whether or not everything would be too heavy for her to carry around while she was traveling, which I am not sure if I don't know. On one hand, if she's like backpacking around, maybe it is difficult to carry even 5 hardcover books.
Well,
and maybe that's not crazy.
Yeah, she was worried about it all fitting in her luggage. But then again, we have more kind of, I don't want to say coincidental, but coinciding behavior of a manic episode, which would be like impulsive overbuying. So this could be one of those instances, I
mean, maybe it is overbuying if you're like thinking you have to get a book for every family member.
I mean, if you travel somewhere, what do you bring back, people? Keychains?
Well,
magnets?
Stuff that's more having to do with the area you were in,
Exactly.
And not necessarily
my friends brought me back chocolate.
Yeah, stuff like that where you're like, I got this at the store over in LA. But yeah, she did like to read, so I don't know. I mean, Katie Orphan, the manager of the bookstore, she doesn't know Elisa's normal behavior or if her behavior at this point was anything out of the normal. That's what I was going to say earlier. On her blog, she talks about how she is kind of reclusive, but she does like to go out and talk to people. She said something along the lines of, you wouldn't think that I would like to go out and talk to people so much. Or maybe it was that you wouldn't think I would like to just stay inside and be an introvert.
Well, that's right, because totally forgot to mention that she threw that soiree before her actual trip to LA. She had friends from like elementary school come and hang out with her before she went on this voyage.
Yeah.
They considered it like a bon
Bon
voyage.
voyage. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So it's kind of a big deal for just a trip to go somewhere.
Yeah, that's
right?
true. Right. Okay, so was she always outgoing and very lively and very friendly whenever she was talking to strangers? Or was this another side effect of a manic episode?
Right.
So the police searched Elisa's room along with the rooftop with search dogs, but they were unable to pick up her scent on the roof. And also in the room, I don't even, like they said, I don't think she was even able to sleep in that room. Like she got moved to that room and then wandered around the hotel all night long until she ended up in a water tank. Now, her getting moved into the room and it happening right after that, definitely, it does seem like that would kind of intensify her feelings of paranoia and rejection and all sorts of stuff.
Right.
So that definitely doesn't seem like to be a coincidence that she ended up dead that very day. Also, I mean, obviously, search dogs didn't pick up her scent, and that could just be because they're not 100% accurate all the time. Maybe she wasn't. Maybe, it's possible that she wasn't in the water tank at that point, but she probably was.
Well, they also couldn't search every room either because they couldn't legally.
Right.
They can only do areas that had probable cause.
Yeah, they said something along the lines of that they needed evidence of a crime having been committed in order to have probable cause to search every room, which I'm like, well, a missing person, but I guess they could have just been gone altogether, I guess. But, it also...
But wouldn't you think, why is there not a loophole about certain buildings that have multiple rooms that you can just, I mean, it's the building. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like we see with like Kanika.
Right.
Kind of the same thing.
Yeah. That's definitely a bummer of an aspect about crimes being committed in hotels that it's like not really. I mean, I think it's unlikely that she wasn't already in the water tank, but if she wasn't and someone was hiding her in their room or had some of her belongings or something in their room, the police never even would have been able to know. It would have just been like, right. Oh, well, there's no evidence of a crime. So, I mean, I understand that you can't especially if it's a resident, like you can't just bust into someone's home because somebody went missing on their street, Right. But anyway, it's kind of I guess there's just it's difficult to navigate that situation. So 1 week after Elisa's disappearance, on February 6th, the police released flyers and made online posts requesting the public's help in finding her. There really wasn't anything that came of that. So another week later, on the 14th, another week had gone by. She still hadn't been seen by anyone. And the police released the surveillance footage that has now become infamous of her in the elevator. That you can see a small glimpse of the hallway just outside the doors of the elevator, but that's about it. So that video is what everybody knows about this case. It is creepy as hell. I mean, you can't deny that. It's creepy as hell regardless. I mean, maybe the fact that she dies in the end and that's going to happen makes it worse, but they released it in a way that it was altered and it made it even more creepy than it even needed to be.
Yeah. So the LAPD released it at 15 frames per second, when in actuality the footage is 20 frames per second.
So it's slowed down significantly.
And if you watch them side by side, it's like, the slower one looks creepier. Right. Everything looks more deliberate and exaggerated. So
yeah, and like, why is she moving so slowly? Yeah, right. And the timestamp is obscured. Why did they do that to begin with? Which makes it admissible in court. So I mean, so that's fucked up. Okay, so really though, see,
I don't know if it matters, but at some points too, her mouth is pixelized.
Yeah, that's like
just her mouth.
Yeah, her mouth is pixelized. The video is super grainy. I'm like, why in these suspicious deaths do we always have surveillance footage that has been seemingly altered or messed with in some way? I know that some people are going to just say you're looking to make it seem like it's been altered, but no, it actually has. It was slowed down. Her
It's
mouth is
missing a
pixelized.
full minute.
It's missing a full minute of footage, which you could argue also I've seen people say, well, she stepped out of frame and it's a motion sensor camera. But that's not true
No.
because it continues to record at the end of the footage they released. It records for another 30 seconds or more where it's just the elevator opening and closing with nobody there, supposedly. So, yeah, I'm like, this is the kind of, I'm like, I'm getting fired up now because that pisses me off.
At minutes, at 25:05 to 25:15, there's weird time skips. It's
Why?
weird. I don't know what the point of that was.
Why would that be? Why would they need to do that? And also, people have asked, why did they release this at all? What good was it going to do to help? But I would say, well, she was wearing, and if they didn't know where she was wearing certain clothes that you could identify her by, and maybe and like some of her pictures, she does look fairly different than the video that they showed.
The video, yeah. I'm like, that doesn't even look like her at some point.
I'm wondering, like, is that because she just isn't wearing her glasses or something? I mean, she's also, it's possible that she was in the middle of a manic episode and it made her look a little different, maybe.
Right.
On the video.
The video itself. So the video itself, she is in the elevator and she walks in and turns to the buttons and directly bends over to look at them. Like she's trying to look at them really up close. And she pushes the buttons, all of them.
All in the middle.
And it almost, yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's like something children annoyingly do.
Right.
And then she steps back into the other corner where she just stands there for a second. And then she kind of looks and she takes a giant step forward out of the elevator and quickly looks left to right as if, because the elevator door goes to close.
Yeah.
But it stops immediately and opens back up as if someone pushes the hold button or, door open because they wanted to catch it too.
Yeah.
But you don't see anybody else in the hallway, and she retreats back into the other corner of the cab where she stands. And from what I read on body language experts, none of her body language indicates that she's feeling threatened necessarily, but it could be kind of a worrisome stance that she has adopted.
She definitely looked like because people will say she's running from somebody, like she's thinking she's being chased. I'm like, no way, dude. She looks super lackadaisical. Like she's not she's not panicked. She's not.
If I was being chased, I'd be slamming that door close
oh my God,
button
I would
and
be
freaking out.
And and if I was peeking out to make sure that someone wasn't coming up, I'd be like kicking around. I don't know what I would do, to be honest, but I wouldn't be just like la da da. Yeah. No, I don't think she's running from anybody.
The door also stays open, but there were people that did test this particular elevator, and they said when you push the door open button, it will stay open for about 2 minutes.
Yeah, they said they have that in place for the residents so they can move furniture, which makes sense.
You're right. So she goes back into the hallway, right? Mm-hmm. And she's kind of standing there doing these odd wavy motions with her arms, and her hands are like super stretched out and moving in almost what look like comfortable positions.
Yeah.
And they say that that's actually something that can happen to people during a manic episode is your body's under so much stress that it starts involuntarily moving in weird manners, which I don't know if I've ever seen somebody do that, but
yeah, I mean, I read a couple people that work in like psychiatric hospitals that there were a couple different people who said that they work with people going through manic episodes, etc. a lot, and that to them this was clearly what was going on here. I mean, I don't think you can say it with 100% surety again, but probably they would be able to identify that behavior as not being something completely out of the norm for somebody going through that, more than you or I, who would see it and be like, oh gosh, it looks very, it looks very scary, but they're more used to seeing it.
She brushes her hair back behind her ear with her elbow open, which indicates a sign of preening, so trying to get someone's attention. It's been associated with feelings of trying to be sexual, I guess.
Okay.
Trying to attract someone. Yeah. But she goes back into the elevator cab and she pushes even more buttons. And then she returns to the wall into the elevator, standing there, and she puts both hands over her ears again briefly as she walks back to the section of the wall where she had been standing before, and still the door remains open.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, on one hand, why would, you may not be able to rationalize anything that she does. So I do understand that. And so because we can't rationalize all the things that she's doing, because she may be going through some mental issues, I know that makes it hard to really postulate on what's going on here. But why would you press all those buttons?
I know.
If I'm trying to rationalize it.
And I did find it odd too that when she re-entered the the elevator cab, she has to brace herself against both sides of the door.
Yeah.
And she seemingly looks a little lightheaded too as well.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people speculate that she was given a date rape drug, but I don't know about that.
I mean, it's not, we'll get to her autopsy. It's not found there.
Right.
But at the same time, just based off of a lot of other factors, if you're not feeling 100%,
right.
Maybe you don't need a date rape drug to feel like your equilibrium is out of whack. And, she also is on a lot of prescription medication, and there are some other medications that over the counter that she's taken, which I know I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but where maybe that could make you feel a little bit like shit, and maybe you're dizzy and you feel ill. I mean, there's just a million logical explanations for why she might not be able to hold herself up fully.
So all in all, I don't feel like anyway that she displayed any sort of threatened body language or behavior, or that she was in intense fear or anything like that. But
I don't know either.
I do feel like she felt like, or there definitely was someone there.
Yeah. And gosh, it's hard because I'm exposing my weaknesses to everyone here. I am a super paranoid person. Like, not in the sense that I'm like, someone's following me. But in general, I have some issues with paranoia that I feel like if I'm just putting myself in her position. So I'm not typically like, oh, someone's behind me. But even mental state aside, if I went to LA by myself and I went to this hotel and I was staying there and thought I was going to be rooming with some people, kind of probably had an idea thinking, oh, people who are going to share a room are going to be young like me and, easygoing, laid back kind of people. Maybe it wasn't quite what she expected. Maybe they made her feel judged, or, like maybe the people that she was staying with were together and they were like, oh God, this girl's now in our room.
Right.
And we're very like secretive and private. And that would send me into a disastrous feeling. I would be feeling terrible. And I know I would get paranoid and anxious. And so even if she wasn't going through a manic episode, that in itself could perhaps be pretty disturbing to her mental state.
Yeah.
And then the other thing we have to take into account is that she has had and expressed it before that she has issues with sleeping and insomnia. And that, I think if you don't know the effect that insomnia can have on your mental health, insomnia is horrible for your mental health.
Poor sleep in general, just if you get crappy sleep, like, you are killing yourself.
Right, exactly.
Quicker than you should be.
For sure. And on top of bipolar disorder, depression, there are so many factors here that could have contributed to her just being in an overall. Good grief. But do you recall when we covered Magdalena Zuk that there is the kind of a psychosis,
Paris syndrome.
Yeah, Paris syndrome, where the traveling and the isolation can make you go into a
frenzy.
Yeah, have some sort of episode.
Well, and also, like, if you romanticize the location that you're getting to and it's not what you expected.
Oh gosh, yeah.
On top of
definitely was the case here.
Yeah, her already you're on Skid Row essentially in LA.
Yeah.
You're thinking you're going to be at this boutique-y, cute old hotel, because she described it as gaudy, but yeah, you would probably just be super disappointed.
Yeah. There's a lot there that would send the most mentally healthy person into some feelings that wouldn't be so great, And I mean, I personally am just like, oh gosh, for some reason just now starting to feel like I can empathize with the way she felt.
Yeah.
Ugh, and it's not good. And I, you know, other than just, you know, random bouts of like little bits of depression and stuff and extreme paranoia, I don't have too many mental health issues, but that would definitely make me, I would not be comfortable
Right.
at all if I were there.
Especially alone.
So yeah, so that's really disturbing. It is disturbing no matter which way you look at it. Like Shai said, a minute of footage was edited out of that elevator footage. And why was that? Why? Is there somebody? The only thing I can think is that somebody's in that footage that they determined was not a suspect anymore, or not a person of interest that they didn't want to expose to the public. But if that was the case, they could have blurred them out.
That would have been hard to do.
Yeah, I don't really know if that's what it was.
Okay, but does it take a whole minute for someone to walk past an elevator door?
No.
Does it take a minute for someone to even look at an elevator? No.
I don't know what it would have been, because you can't really rationalize it and say, well, they were getting rid of stuff that doesn't have any relation to Elisa because they left a ton of it at the end. So, you know.
Right. And there was also footage of her being seen with two strange men who seemingly handed her a box.
Okay.
And then they were not seen at all.
So that is so what I read about that is that it was that she bought enough stuff at the bookstore that they had people help her carry her stuff to the hotel, to her room. That's what I was told. Well, I was told by the bookstore. No, I read from the bookstore manager.
So were they bellhops then, or just random people off the street?
Well, they were supposedly they worked at the bookstore is what I read.
Oh. See, and that would be a crap ton of stuff that you would have bought at a bookstore.
No, that is definitely true. That's more than 5 books, I would think. Well, because she probably got gifts for them, and then maybe she was buying for herself too. I mean, gosh, I don't know. But that is a little excessive, obviously. So in this video, I had always thought she was wearing a skirt. It turns out that she's wearing large men's basketball shorts. She has a large t-shirt on.
It's a beer shirt.
A beer shirt. And which, I mean, I don't know if that's normal for her or not, but then she has a small, well, okay. It does. We'll get to that. But she's wearing these large men's shorts. And I'm like, that seems really odd. Maybe she's just comfy.
Well, maybe they were what she had planned on sleeping in.
Oh.
Their pajama-like, because the footage was at midnight, correct?
Yeah. Okay. So maybe she was wearing her sleep clothes.
I will throw on my husband's basketball shorts and shirt at night.
Okay. See, I never wear my husband's shorts, but I would wear his sweatpants.
Right.
So that was, to me, I was like, that's really weird. But maybe you're totally right. Maybe that was what she was planning on sleeping in. Okay, I think we're moving on. So during the time Elisa was missing, residents at the hotel began complaining about low water pressure, and some reportedly said that the water had a dark color and a foul odor. Ew. So this drove the maintenance of the hotel to go up on the roof on February 19th to check out the water tanks, and worker Santiago Lopez found Elisa's body in one of the 4 water tanks on the roof, which provided water to guest rooms, a kitchen, and a coffee shop. Holy moly. Like, the sick, I mean, not to be, I don't want to be disrespectful to poor Elisa here, but that is the sickest bunch of crap. Elisa's body had been in that, supposedly have been in that water tank for 2 freaking weeks.
So these people are showering, drinking with this dirty, I mean, I don't want to be rude, but dead body water.
There's a dead body in it, for fuck's sake. There's that means there's excrement.
A decomposing.
Everything. I mean,
which
is not good.
So my husband, being a plumber, did tell me, so this is how out of date and how much the Cecil Hotel cared about their everything, right?
Codes and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so what should have happened is they should have updated their plumbing and installed something called like a backflow, which would have prevented at least the coffee shop from getting this nasty water. I mean, that's I don't know how many people a day getting nasty coffee water. And that kind of has a cool story behind it. Like a funeral home in New York with their funeral water, like body water, got into like the city's water supply. But anyway.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So
I get I have a feeling in the back of my throat right now.
Yeah, I know. I'm like,
a little nauseous.
So yeah, I mean, there one guest reported that the water was black and just nasty.
I mean, I'll say this. When Santiago Lopez found Elisa, the reason why he went to that tank first was because the hatch of it was open. And so this hotel is such a piece of crap
Right.
that they literally have the water they provide you to bathe, drink, etc. they cook with, sitting open to the elements with just a hatch that can be easily opened and closed. And Elisa's body had been in there for 2 weeks. The hatch was open unless somebody put her in the meantime after she was dead, which I mean, I guess we can talk about now, or we can get into later, but that would be extremely difficult to get a limp, dead body into a little hatch up a 10-foot ladder.
Right. So there was 4 tanks up there. And what's funny is they were saying, oh, you have to have a key to get up to the rooftop, which is untrue because a Chinese YouTuber went very shortly after her discovery. He went up to the roof, no problem. And the hatches were still open. Two of them. Right. Like this hotel does not care.
No. I mean, technically speaking, they're supposed to have these things up to code, which would not allow any of this to happen. But
no,
clearly they don't care. So these tanks were 10 feet high and 6 feet wide. And at the time that Elisa was found, they said that the tank was 2/3 of the way full. Who knows how full it was when she had gotten in there, since it was 2 weeks that had gone by. But they said it was difficult to access this platform because it was 4 foot above the roof. In order to get to that platform, then you would have to climb up a ladder on that platform, squeeze through some equipment and tanks, and then reach another narrow ladder and climb up 10 feet on the side of the tank to get inside. I mean, I gotta say, as much as I hate to think that Elisa herself got in this tank, it would be flippin' impossible to have maybe 2 people could do it a little easier. But then you still have to climb up a ladder with a 112-pound body, 120, I think. After she'd absorbed water, 100. I think she was 112, and climb up 10 foot of this like little shitty ladder, and then jam her into this little hole. It just doesn't seem.
They couldn't even retrieve her from that hole. They had to cut open the side of the tank to get her out.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't seem likely that she didn't put herself in that tank. Unfortunately, they also said that alternatively, you could climb to the top of the elevator utility room and climb out of a window there and jump onto the top of the tank in order to access the tank, which is possible that she did that. Either way about it, she got up on the roof. There's a million ways. You can either climb the fire escape, maybe an employee went outside and left the door ajar, going through the utility room. There's a million ways that she could have gotten out there, and she obviously did. So it wasn't magic. It wasn't sorcery. It was the fact that the hotel has absolutely zero safety precautions put in place to prevent people from climbing up onto a roof of a hotel where they have at least had 16 freaking possible suicides. Like, come on.
Did you already say she was found naked?
No, I did not.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so she was found naked in the tank too as well.
Yeah.
Her clothes were in the tank with her.
Yes.
But they did have a sand-like particulate on them, which it was very similar to the roof's flooring, I guess you
the sediment
call it.
On the roof. Yes.
Which I think something about, if you've ever been on top of a commercial building roof, they do that a lot, and I think it's to absorb more water or something.
Okay. So she had in there a red hoodie. It was extra small. She had her size medium men's black shorts. She had that large t-shirt. She had polka dot sandals and then size small lace underwear. Maybe her clothes are that disproportionate in size, or maybe those weren't her clothes. I don't know. And nobody's ever been able to verify that to anybody else. So that said, though, so like Shai said, there was that particulate on her clothes from the rooftop, most likely. So she either was laying out on the roof looking at the stars and decided to take her clothes off and throw them in the tank, or take them into the tank with her, or she was laying on the rooftop or something, and climbed into the tank with her clothes on, realized she couldn't get out, and took her clothes off because they were weighing her down. But for some reason, her clothes were on the rooftop at some point, probably. And I find it really odd if she threw them in before her. So I don't know. I mean, or alternatively, somebody could have dragged her or been, up there
with her. Yeah.
Yeah. Did she remove her clothes after getting in the tank is a question I just wonder, because I'm wondering, would her clothes still have that particulate, or would they have been like folded up with it on there and then thrown in? I mean, maybe it would still stay on there. I just really don't know.
The only thing I can think of is when people suffer from like massive mental breakdowns, manic episodes, and they have been known to get naked.
Yeah. I just wonder why she would have like thrown her clothes in, but
I don't know.
Who knows? I guess you can't really rationalize it. So like we said, the tank was still open, the tank lid, when she was in there. It wasn't a bottomless tank, obviously. She had enough air to breathe. So did she just run out of energy? Was she treading water for hours and hours and hours? It was kind of cool outside, so I bet the water was fairly cold, and it doesn't take freezing water to give you hypothermia. So it's possible that she just succumbed to the elements and wasn't even conscious enough to tread water, and maybe she died that way. When they found her, she was floating face up. So you talked about that tourist who came and both the stupid lids were still open. Freaking hotel, dude. So we're going to move on to her autopsy now. Elisa's cause of death, on 6/15, it was marked accident. Okay. On 6/18, they changed it to could not be determined. And then 3 days before they released this autopsy to the public, they changed it back to accident and said it was an error that they changed it to could not be determined.
Right.
I guess they didn't want it to be too ambiguous because, I mean, I don't really understand why they did that either. I mean, obviously there are possible reasons, but it wasn't like anything in the autopsy changed. This was 6 months after she actually died. So, or, 6 or so. Yeah, about 6 months after she actually died. So it's not like this change, nothing actually changed in that period of time with her actual autopsy. So that's very strange that they would have changed it back that late in the game. Who knows? But again, it's just another kind of questionable aspect here.
What I thought was interesting is the autopsy report and its conclusions were under heavy question because it does not say what the results of a rape kit or fingernail kit were, or even if they were processed.
Well, yeah, they weren't actually. So they didn't process them because they said she was reported as being, that's why I was like, the alone thing is such bullshit, because they're sitting here saying she was alone, so we don't need to process that stuff because she wasn't with anybody anyway. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That's just lazy. And, people say, well, she was in the water for 2 weeks. Could you even have done a rape kit? Yes, her body was fully intact, if not just for, there was some skin slippage and, stuff like that, but there was internally everything was there totally fine. They were able to do toxicology screens. They could have processed under her nails. They could have processed a rape kit just to see what happened.
Well, and she did have pooling of blood in her anal area, which some people argue is a sign of sexual abuse. But there's pathologists, and also I've talked to a few medical field friends, and I'm sure you've talked to P about it too.
Yeah.
That could really just be something that occurred because of the bloating of the body and the decomposition, and her rectum was also prolapsed.
Yeah. So
I think people kind of blow that out of proportion.
Yeah. Well, everybody wants everything to be really sensationalized, but I think the way she was, like I said, that she was floating face up. So her lower body was at the lowest points. So that would be called dependent lividity, and definitely is consistent with water decomposition. I am having trouble talking, and a side effect of of her death and the position of her body that was floating like that. So, while in some cases you might be able to point to that and say that was a sign of sexual assault, in this case, I really, really don't think it was.
Maybe if there was like tearing of skin
right.
and damage to the outer, but there wasn't.
Plus, she didn't have any defensive wounds or bruising or anything like that whatsoever.
No.
Which, I mean, I just find that to be odd, because even if she accidentally got herself stuck in the tank. I would think that you would try to like bang around. I don't know. I mean, maybe she wasn't thinking that way. Maybe that wasn't even
Right.
She had no signs of any sort of struggle or anything like that whatsoever. So, you know, it's hard to say that somebody did something untoward to her, even though we know that she, in that state of mind, that she is more susceptible to a predator. That said, it doesn't look like she was defending herself or there was any sort of struggle, like I said a million times. Okay, so
Right.
they did toxicology tests on her blood, in her liver enzymes, and in her heart and bile. And those were not affected by being submerged in water. She had totally normal levels of alcohol. It was like 0.02% or something.
It was very minimal.
I think it's like a naturally occurring amount even.
Yeah.
So she had not consumed alcohol the day that she died. There was also not any sign of like GHB, like we said, or recreational drugs. I don't know what all they tested for, but regardless, they did find some of the drugs that she had been prescribed, and that was Wellbutrin, which she was prescribed 300 milligrams a day. It was an atypical antidepressant that was prescribed for depression, and there was also Lamictal, which is she was prescribed at 100 milligrams, which is an anticonvulsant and mood stabilizer prescribed for epilepsy and bipolar disorder. Effexor, she was prescribed at 225 milligrams, which is an antidepressant that's prescribed for major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, and social phobia. And then she had very trace amounts of Seroquel in her system, which can be prescribed as an antipsychotic. And I see a lot of people, and I mean, we may even disagree about this, but I see a lot of people say, well, she wasn't taking this. It was found in very trace amounts in her blood. She wasn't taking it. That means she had a psychotic episode for sure because she stopped taking this. But what she was prescribed was 25 milligrams, and it was as night as needed, which this Seroquel can also be used as a sleep aid. And from everybody that I spoke with in regard to like pharmacists or people who would prescribe medication, that amount and that prescription is definitely for a sleep aid, because you would never prescribe an antipsychotic as needed at such a low dosage.
Yeah. So that does make sense. But then I have to ask, because of her insomnia and her reversed crappy sleep schedule, was she even taking it? Maybe she didn't like the way it made her feel.
It's possible. But there was,
I mean,
like, they said that if it wasn't in her system at all, it would have come up as not ND, not or what is it? Oh, heck. Well, it doesn't matter. It wouldn't have.
We're not coroners or autopsies.
Yeah, I know. I try to know as much as I can, but it wouldn't have shown up at all. Huh. And so it did show up in trace amounts. And if you want to continue to, not you, but if anybody wants to continue to argue that this was used for a mood stabilizer with her bipolar disorder, the typical ranges that it's prescribed for that purpose are 400 to 600 milligrams. And it can be prescribed to up to 800 milligrams if it's prescribed for psychosis or schizophrenia.
What the heck? Then are you just a zombie at that point?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe it...
Holy moly.
Maybe your chemistry can take that. I don't know. For her, though, it was 25 milligrams, just to emphasize how disparate it is between what she was prescribed and what it is prescribed if you're using it as an antipsychotic. That's pretty significant.
What was that sleep aid that came out that everybody was like sleepwalking on and eating and doing really weird things on? Do you remember that? Was that Seroquel or something else?
No, it's
Lumify?
Lunesta?
Lunesta? I don't know. But anyway.
No, I don't remember.
I can't even take Unisom.
I don't remember what it is. But I know that people were like driving around and stuff. And they were, oh, God. Oh, gosh.
Imagine trying to be on a cut and you're just like up eating cupcakes because you're sleeping.
Ugh, no. Yeah, no. That would be... You know, people do that. They have to like lock their cabinets.
Crazy.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay. So her body at the time that they found her was moderately decomposed. There was graining of her skin. Aside from her lower legs and feet, There was marbling on her upper thighs, and like I said, there was skin slippage on her face, her chest, her back, her arms, and her left lower leg.
So nothing out of the ordinary from
No.
someone floating around in a tank.
Exactly. So it really, from everything, unless they're just absolutely lying about everything, which I don't think is the case, it doesn't seem as though anything forced, unless maybe she was forced into that tank at like gunpoint or something. That's the only thing I can think of. Or maybe someone was like, hey, let's go for a swim, and then left her in there. You know, I just don't think that's really probably that likely. But I would like to know if all these people who reported seeing her alone so much had reported her acting strangely or exhibiting any sort of manic behavior. It doesn't seem like they had anything to say other than that she was alone. And maybe it's just because there's so many people that live or stay at that hotel that are a little odd that they don't even take notice, maybe. You know, I think that probably...
this is a very weird part of Los Angeles, California. Yeah. What is normal down there?
I mean, I guess we don't know. So the LAPD eventually concluded their investigation into her death, but they could not determine how she got on the roof or got into the water. I mean, obviously, you're not always going to be able to close cases, but it just seems like there's a lot of, up in the air circumstances here. I mean, yeah. I guess it's just hard to determine when you don't have any way to see, I guess, or there's no one that saw her. I mean, I just think it's kind of odd that it was only midnight in a place that I bet you that people aren't all holing up going to bed like I do at 9 o'clock. And why did nobody report seeing her or anything like that? How did she seriously get up there without being seen by anybody?
Well,
I don't know.
Right? Like, how did Kanika get up those stairs and walk around a hotel without anybody seeing her?
Is it just a matter of perfect freaking timing, you know? Or is it because there actually were other people around? Elisa's parents' own attorney representing them in the case against the hotel, they state now that she fell off her medication, had a psychotic break at the hotel, and her death was accidental, that she got herself into that tank. So that's her own family now, what they have determined.
Right.
I think what happened is her cousin received a postcard from her, which they have not necessarily revealed all the contents of. There's a little corner of a snapshot. It doesn't tell you anything. I could read it, but it's just a bunch of random words. So I don't know. I guess from whatever they read on that postcard, it seemed as though they then took away that she was mentally unsound at the time, and they are now saying, I think also in order to further their case against the hotel, that this was a accident they could have prevented.
Right.
They kind of have to say that, I think, because otherwise the hotel maybe wouldn't have any sort of liability.
The hotel actually argued that they could not have reasonably foreseen Elisa getting into the water tanks, and that since it still remains unknown how she did, that they could not take any liability to prevent that. And I'm just like, oh, you mean like having locks and codes and closing and locking the stupid tanks in the first place?
Yeah, even though I'm almost positive that I read that they are like taking measures to create safety measures to prevent these kinds of things from happening in the future, which would only go to suggest that they knew that this was, but it's a piece of crap. So
it's a trash can.
It's a trash can of a hotel. So
don't stay there.
Don't. The judge dismissed her parents' case against the hotel, and this judge is a trash can himself. As it was later reported, he was a sadistic predator lawyer that got in plenty of trouble at the firm that he once worked at due to his sadistic predatory behavior, which I'm like,
that gave me chills.
Freaking seriously. Mm-hmm. And while this is totally not really that related to this case, because it's related, but does it have any bearing necessarily on why Elisa died or anything like that? No, but it does go to show that this guy's a dickbag who probably wouldn't give two craps about some girl at all, who was put into some crappy situations. And also, why do we have this like terrible good old boy judge situation going around? Why are there so many of these dudes who are like, oh, like Brock Turner's judge, who is like, I don't want
Oh
to
God.
ruin your future by prosecuting you for committing a heinous rape. You know, it's just truly, I'm like, there's a bunch of pieces of trash that are judges. Why is this the case? They are determining people's
Right.
futures. I am going to just blow the whole world up. Okay. So in her blog, Elisa had talked about days where she felt that she was experiencing hypomania, which is a just less severe occurrence of mania. So, you know,
Yeah.
in bipolar disorder, manic episodes can last 7 days or so, and they are followed by depressive episodes that last around 2 weeks. But I'm sure in every case there's individual circumstances to every case. But in the year prior to her death, she definitely had talked about the fact that she experienced hypomania. Oh, and also in her autopsy, she had Sudafed in her...
Oh, like Sinutab.
Yeah, which...
And ibuprofen.
And Sudafed can interact with antipsychotics to send you into a manic episode, or they have a few different types of reactions. So it's possible that even if she hadn't lapsed her medication, that even, well, and we like you said when we started, you can be on medication and the medication itself gives you side effects that are exactly what you're trying to take the medication to prevent in the first place.
Right.
It's not an exact science, and I think it's really kind of experimental, you know. So unfortunately, even if she was taking her medication as prescribed, she could still have had a psychotic episode or a manic episode, or she could be experiencing the first signs of schizophrenia for that matter. I know that it presents itself, you know, in your late teens, early 20s generally, and that is exactly where she was. But it also could just be that she was experiencing a severe case of mania, and to people that may not know her, she might have seemed just super friendly and outgoing, and maybe she was going through a manic episode, you know. I mean, it's just,
right.
Who knows? I can sure hear that purring. That's like the most...
Henry.
Oh wait, is he snoring? I thought it was your
Yeah.
cat purring.
No, that's my dog
Henry.
snoring.
That's so funny. I guess it's just
So,
their snouts that make them snore like that.
I know. I mean, he doesn't have a short snout, but there's something. I think he has like a deviated septum.
Something, because Boo does it too.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to theories here, which is all we really got. That's all there is here in this story, really, is theories.
I guess two of the ones I'll get into, which are pretty weird and wild, is Elisa had actually sent out a tweet before her trip about a Canadian military something. I don't know what Canada has, but
Mounties?
I don't know if it was the Mounties though, because
they're called
because
they're called Mounties, aren't they?
She had sent out this tweet about how they had been in the works of inventing this invisibility cloak, and that it would have been able to hide soldiers in the midst of war.
Okay.
And that the person that she had been talking about, that she'd been talking to, a love interest, she was meeting down in California, and that had been the guy in the hallway of the elevator scene, and that everything just kind of went downhill from there.
I find that to be so strange.
Yeah.
So she's posted that she's meeting somebody in California, but no one saw her with anybody or anything.
Right.
That's really weird.
But then it does go back to, you know, they were saying that she was a Harry Potter fan and that she had posted about the invisibility cloak and Harry Potter and whatnot. So maybe it was just a weird coincidence or something. So,
yeah. That's definitely a very out there
theory.
Mm-hmm.
So another one would be, I tried looking this up on the internet too, that a visual effects agency called the Invisible Light Agency actually had a building registered within the hotel, and they specialized in like lighting effects and weapons. inside and outside of films and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
I can't find anything. There is no website anymore, I believe, for this Invisible Light Agency, and the only remnants of a logo is some triangles, which we know
Oh,
is closely affiliated with like the Illuminati.
yeah.
And what's really weird is that Cecil translates into blind or
Uh-huh.
dim-sighted. So
Okay.
I'm like, interesting.
Are you trying to say that there are lizard people
Yes, it's
who have
exactly what
grabbed
I'm trying to say.
who have grabbed Elisa Lam and taken her out to some other dimension, and now her outer body is was stuffed in a water cooler?
Right.
Okay, I know you're not really saying
But
that.
anyway, I just thought those were weird instances, and
That's weird.
who knows? I don't think, I personally don't think they had
Yeah.
anything to do with it.
I mean, I think personally, what I think happened here, and maybe this is also, I'm not trying to like steal your theory thunder or anything,
Well, they're
but
not my theories.
okay. Okay. She was experiencing some hard times. And I think that either she was going through a manic episode or she was depressed or something of that sort. She booked this trip either in the midst of a manic episode or in the midst of a particularly low point, and maybe even it wasn't a low, I don't know. I mean, maybe not low necessarily, but maybe a tumultuous time. I'm not sure. And then whatever happened when she got there only exacerbated it clearly. And I don't know if it was the isolation, being in a weird place or the unexpected circumstances, but I think she was not of sound mind the night that she was wandering around on that camera. Now,
Right.
who the heck knows if in that state somebody came and took advantage of her and she ended up dead, or if she herself was not thinking clearly, climbed into a water cooler for whatever reason, water tank, and could not get herself out of there. But one of those is my only possible, obvious. I mean, they're possible theory in my opinion.
Well, I was going to say, I found conflicting information regarding the hatch of the tank she was found in. I had seen and read that it was closed at the time that they found her. So they were like, how the heck did she close this on herself?
Yeah. Well, and that
But
that is what I had initially read, but in the autopsy, I believe that it states that the hatch was open.
it was
Yeah, which
open.
I mean,
Well, then you see that there is a pattern of them leaving them
yeah,
open.
and
So,
that really does take a lot of the questionable circumstances or mysterious circumstances, and at least in that regard, like she didn't close it, and so she
right.
didn't, so nobody had to have come behind her and closed it either. Even though
Yeah.
I just don't know if she got in there with all her clothes on and took them off. Why would she have taken? Well, I guess we will never know. Well, but why'd she take off her underwear?
Yeah. Why did she get naked?
I don't
Naked,
know.
naked, you know?
But maybe she did before she got in, or maybe, I mean, and she could have just been like, I need my clothes to be with me in case somebody like comes and steals them while I'm up in the tank. I mean, I don't know. But also like maybe there was another thing that I had kind of thought about where it was like, okay, so maybe she got up on the roof, because she did seem to kind of have a thing for the roofs of buildings, like in her pictures that she posted and everything on her Tumblr. There was a lot of different pictures of like cityscapes and things like, or like, I think there was like a couple of the sky. And maybe she was just kind of had romanticized this idea of like being on roofs of buildings in cities or something. She went up there to just kind of lay up on the roof and look at the sky, and maybe she was feeling paranoid and had a lot of anxiety. And and it was said that employees at the hotel would take smoke breaks on the roof, so maybe she was up there by herself and she heard some people come up there to take a smoke break. She wasn't necessarily in their line of vision because, like I said, it's kind of tucked away a little bit where the water tanks are. So maybe she just freaked out when she heard voices and was just trying to hide for a second and got in
Right.
over her head.
That's where I was going, where I think this whole thing kind of planned out was she was suffering a lot, from her depression relapse, and then the pressures of school got to her, She had a really crappy sleep schedule. Who knows if she was eating properly? She wasn't working out anymore. I think the booking of the trip was kind of the start of the whirlwind manic episode.
Yeah.
And it just, I think, eventually came to a point where she was experiencing her down. And yeah, and I personally do think someone was in the hallway, whether it be someone who was sinister or possibly maybe it was just other hotel guests and they found her movements and her demeanor very strange. So they just said, okay, never mind,
Yeah.
heck this, we're
Oh,
getting out of
like
here.
turn around or something, like just
Yeah.
to avoid the awkward. Mm-hmm.
And maybe she was in such a state of paranoia that she thought maybe they were following her, and that's what I thought, is that she was trying to find some place to hide.
Yeah. I mean, that
And
does,
the water.
if you're thinking, about it in that kind of point of view where you're trying to, because it seemed like she was kind of trying to hide in the elevator, whatever was going on. Yeah. I mean, obviously it's not a logical deduction to be like, well, I'm going to go hide in that water tank, but maybe she just didn't even realize what she was doing. And also, I don't really know, even if the water was full, I don't know if she would have been able to reach the lid to get out, and the hatch area to get out. And I know that they don't make those so that a human person can climb out of them. That's not what they're there for. So yeah.
See, I don't even think it was a suicide attempt, because to me, I'm thinking you're on the top of a roof of like a 15-story hotel. Why would you not just jump off?
Yeah. Well, and I definitely don't think it was a suicide attempt. I think,
no,
if anything, like they said, it was an accident. I think like she either accidentally got herself stuck in that water tank and succumbed to the elements, because it would get fairly chilly in there, especially being submerged in water.
Right.
Or somebody coerced her into there. I just don't think that's likely.
Right.
I think it's, just based like we've kind of said, based off of every other circumstance that we're privy to. Her blogs previous to her leaving, the contact that she had with people while she was in California, her video of her, it obviously looks to be fairly indicative of some sort of manic episode of some sort that obviously just ended in a terribly awful fashion, obviously. Yeah. So.
Okay, so this one's really weird. So the Lam Elisa is a tuberculosis diagnosis test using urine and sputum samples to locate tuberculosis in suspect patients infected by the disease. Really weird that it's named Lam Elisa Lam.
Yeah.
And shortly after this whole thing with Elisa Lam, the biggest tuberculosis outbreak amongst the homeless community in LA.
Right.
So
this is kind of leading to this topic that I wanted to mention, which is synchronicity. Once you start looking into, which is, let me actually give you, which I didn't write it down because it's kind of a ambiguous definition, but synchronicity is the simultaneous occurrence of events that appear significantly related but have no discernible causal connection. It's a concept that was first introduced by Carl Jung. I think is it Jung? I don't really know. I sound like a complete fool right now. I know I've heard it a couple different
times.
Either way, it holds that events are meaningful coincidences if they occur with no causal relationship yet seem to be meaningfully related. So in this case of Elisa Lam, there are so many of these synchronicity like events that the more you look into it, I didn't even try to look into it, and I found a million. And there's the one that Shai just said about the Lam Elisa test, which is just such a crazy coincidence.
Right.
I mean, that's nuts. And then there's the movie Dark Water that was, I think in 2001 or 2 is when they released that movie. So it was before this happened, where a lady is living in like a high-rise apartment building and has all these weird occurrences take place. And through, supernatural events, she ends up finding there's like somebody, I guess, kind of haunting her apartment sort of. And she ends up finding this girl in a water tank on the roof of the building, which is bizarre. I saw that movie so long ago, I don't really remember it. But like,
I don't remember it either.
What a bizarre coincidence, you know? I mean,
well, there was like a few movies and shows based off of this incident too, as well.
Oh, well, like prior to this or after?
After.
I know they did like they kind of based some of American Horror Story off of it.
Yeah.
But now Dark Water, that was before. So it just happened to be such, I mean, and I'm not saying that because they made a movie about something that happened similar to this, that it had anything to do with this. But also maybe it's also possible that she had seen this movie and had it in her subconscious and even subconsciously got in, you know, to this water tank. I'm not saying that's definitely 100%. There's so many bizarre things.
Right.
And I'm now just rambling.
So there was graffiti in some sort of weird piggish Latin found on some equipment near the water tanks. One old and one seemingly newer. Mm-hmm. And they say it roughly translates to, I'm done with her, or I'm finished with her.
Yeah. Okay.
So there is suspect that there's weird cult behavior, which I wouldn't put that too far off either because of the strange place that they're in, the history of the hotel. You know how people get when they get really obsessed about certain serial killers and they kind of try to mimic or recreate their crimes or whatever.
Right.
So do I think it was a cult? No, it doesn't look, it's definitely not a cultish type killing.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't have hidden her. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but.
Yeah. But I just thought that was weird.
Yeah.
And kind of really creepy.
Oh, I didn't even write all the synchronicities down, but there were a bunch, and I know like you just keep reading it and you find more and more. I mean, like you could say that the post about the invisibility cloak and then the fact that this company is in that building is a synchronicity. You know, and there's we didn't even talk about so synchronicity aside, there are people who theorize that this was Elisa, especially from the elevator footage, Elisa playing a game like the elevator game, which is supposed to be you go to a certain floor, you press certain buttons, and you're going to end up with some woman from another dimension comes to escort you to this other realm or something. I mean, even
it's a Korean game.
Okay. So sure, but regardless, she wasn't even on the correct floor. They've determined for that, so it doesn't matter. But still, people will say that. They'll say that it's a supernatural whatever. I mean, I truly can't say 100% that there wasn't somebody affecting her mind or anything, just because I really have no idea. But that seems like the most far off possibility here, and I'm not really sure that.
And even more far off one is people even speculated that Richard Ramirez's ghost still haunted the hotel, and he was the one to kill her,
which is stupid.
But he was still alive at the time this was happening.
Right.
So
yeah, he was still just in prison, so he wasn't.
We were still dating,
right? Unless he had what is it called? Where you. Oh heck! It's like something I know.
A Jedi?
I mean, sure, but whatever. When you can travel multiple different places at once. What in the heck? Astral projection, unless he astral projected himself into the hotel. So yeah, the ghosts. You know, people want to blame weird stuff whenever there's not an obvious answer to something like, especially this tragic with such bizarre footage. It's just, but let's just be logical about it. In my opinion. And to me, it seems like she was vulnerable to herself or someone else. And that's very likely what happened, is that because of her mental state at the time, she was vulnerable to either going and doing something that injured her or harmed her without her really realizing that she was doing this. In no way do I think that she was trying to kill herself.
No, I don't think so either. I just, like you said, I think it was just an unfortunate series of unfortunate. Okay,
Let's not Lemony Snicket.
I know. I just think it was a
But
super
you're right.
unfortunate
Right.
situation that she was dealing with alone. Her family didn't, either they didn't know the extent of her depression or they didn't support her. And so she felt like her only place to really vent was internet on
Right.
a blog.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I personally just think it was a super unfortunate accident that
Yeah.
happened to this poor woman. And I think it's kind of like really rude to be like, it's a ghost. It was a
Yeah.
ghost game. Like, shut up.
Yeah.
You're just
Well,
like downplaying the fact that people need help.
right. And also, it wouldn't have probably happened had she stayed at a better hotel that had their freaking
Crafty
safety
hotels.
measures in order and they were
Yeah.
following codes and you're not just able to go willy-nilly out on the roof and get into a water tank without anyone noticing for 2 weeks. So, I mean, that's the other thing. That's the other damn thing. So she's in that tank for 2 weeks. The lid's open. Nobody freaking knew. Like, so you're telling me you don't even check. Those tanks are vulnerable to the elements all the time, and you
Yeah.
don't even check on a regular basis to see if everything's in working order or okay. Like, that is troubling beyond belief. And the fact that the family's case against the hotel was dismissed by this shit piece of crap judge is really ridiculous, because if anyone should be responsible for at least like just laying the groundwork for a disaster, it should be that hotel.
I want to know if the hotel contacted the people previously during that 2 week period and were like, are you sick? Have you experienced
Yeah.
anything? We feel like we need to let you know you need to go to the doctor because we found a dead body in our
Right.
water tank. Did they even do
Right.
that?
I don't know. I know they did contact their residents about it, and that they like kind of made some sort of deal with them so that they would stay there. Like, they didn't have to pay rent for a month or something. Like, there was some sort of deal that they
Ew.
cut so that, like, hey, just keep living here, because it would be detrimental to them if it were to come out that there had been a dead body. Well, I mean, obviously it came
Right.
out, but they didn't want to lose a whole bunch of
Revenue.
yeah. I think the lack of sleep really might have been a trigger for this episode altogether. The fact that it was a long-standing issue that she was having, she wasn't, it doesn't seem like she was taking her sleep aid as regularly as every other medication that she was taking. But I do have a few questions about, even if this is all true, that she unfortunately got herself in the water tank and could not get out, why did they edit the surveillance footage? I'm never going to let it go.
I
So I'm just going
know.
to keep asking that question. Why did they edit the surveillance? Why did they not release it in the first place? Why did they not release it the first week after 1 week that she'd been missing? Why did they wait for the second week? Why was it edited? Why was it slowed down? What was missing from it? Were they just trying to cover up a crap job of investigation, or were they just trying to cover their ass? I guess maybe that's very, very likely that they were just trying to cover their asses and it wasn't a thorough investigation. And they did, as little as they, I mean, I don't know, little as they could to just get it closed and done with. And they said because it was not a foreigner. Well, she was foreign. She was visiting the country, and they took it extra serious. But her family can barely even travel here. They didn't come to the court case, the hearing, which probably didn't help their case. But so that's another thing I wanted to add here is like, so when her family went to court, the judge was hearing their case about the lawsuit against the hotel, and they didn't show up for some reason. So I don't know if they just feel like they don't want to have anything to do with this anymore. They just want their daughter's death to just rest, to rest and everything stop. I don't really know. But they didn't show up. So that's also interesting.
So overall, just super tragic, leaves you with more questions than answers. And I guess never go stay at the Cecil Hotel.
The stay at Maine so
stay on Maine.
It's now been bought by someone else who has claimed that he's going to put a pool on the roof and like do all this stuff, and a lot of it sounds to me just really odd and slightly disrespectful the way he put it in the article where he was interviewed. Just like, I think because he said it was like, we're gonna put a pool on the roof, the water tower's in the line of sight of the pool or something. Like it was a
what a D bag.
Like it's now a haunted attraction or something. Yeah,
that's exactly what it is to him.
Yeah, he sounds like a douche. So anyway, it's one of those cases that I kind of hate, because then I'm left with just like, well, that's what we think might have happened, but we don't really know. And that's kind of it. So, it's all that we can do unless somebody sometime in the future comes out with more information, like maybe that they had spent time with her, or somebody's hiding something and that gets made out in the open. That's the only way that we're going to really know anything more, other than just conjecture and, trying to come up with a theory of how she ended up in the water tank. But to me,
right,
accidental tragedy, I would say. So
same.
I know that we have gotten that request. Elisa Lam has been a requested case for a long time. I hope that we were able to maybe take away some of the mysticism about some of the aspects of her death and the different things that you may have heard before, or that you maybe learned something new.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, I think that just, we just had to come from our usual perspective of look at the facts and, try to think about the most logical possibility and not go out in crazy land.
Off the rails.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's it for Elisa Lam.
That's all.
Yeah, it's a real giant bummer of a case. Most of them are. But it definitely is a dark and dreary and depressing story.
So maybe we can do something fun and...
Maybe.
Probably not, but okay.
I think we might be on the true crime train for at least a few more weeks, just because we took a lot of time off. So, if you have donated to our PayPal at paypal.me/creepitreal, we appreciate you greatly. You're going to get cards, and everybody that's done that, we love you so much. We're going to set up our Patreon this damn week. So while I can't tell you it at this very second, you're going to see it. We'll make some posts about it, and we're going to have one last Creeping Up episode that is going to be free for everybody. And then after that, this week's very last Creeping Up.
Cut me off.
We're signing off of the available for everybody, and it's going to switch over to our Patreon subscribers only. And we're going to add some extra perks to the Patreon to give y'all incentive to donate to us, to help us. Oh, yes, because, for example, right now we are getting a new design made, and especially for our shirts and everything that we have been promising. And the only reason why we were able to do this was because of y'all's donations to our PayPal. So it really goes a long way to help us out. I know that I just sound like I'm over here begging, but it really does help tremendously. So we're getting a design and shirts made because of you guys donating to us. So the more that you can donate, the more things that we can do. And so it's super appreciated. Do it if you love us. You should love us if you're still listening.
Switch to crack from Coke if it saves you money. I don't care. You can make the donation.
Every little bit. It really goes a long way. And what was the other thing I was going to say to you guys? Something. There was something. Okay. So I need to post, and I will be doing it to our Facebook, the listener stories, now that it looks like everybody has gotten a good everyone that is a general regular listener has gotten a chance to listen to everybody's stories, because we owe 2 people some sweet gifts. So I'm going to put it up there. I'll put it on our Instagram. Be looking out for it so that you can go read the stories if you need to remember what was said, and then vote on which stories were your favorites, because there was 15, 16 people, and that, that gives everybody a pretty decent chance to win prize. And we failed completely at starting our tinfoil hat thing. We'll do it. We'll do it soon.
Well, yeah.
We have a lot of stuff going on.
I'm actually out of tinfoil.
I bought a huge roll of it.
I wonder why.
You wonder why you're out? Because you made like 17.
I made some hats.
She's got hats for sale.
Hats for sale.
But anyway, so yeah, I can't wait to show y'all the new artwork, and I really can't wait to give y'all some shirts and everybody wear them around and stickers and stuff. Like, I'm pretty jazzed about this. It's finally happening. So, okay, stay tuned later this week for Creeping Up. We're gonna tell you some tales. My dog is a literal nutcase, dude. I mean, jeez Louise. And you know what's funny is, like, he's pretending like he cares about ripping this thing up and stuff, you know, and all he's doing is trying to get a reaction out of me because he either wants to be cuddled or he has to poop. So he has like these little frenzy. Oh, well, also I haven't taken him on a walk yet today because it was raining. So
that's probably what it is.
And he's such a baby. Oh my gosh, he'll be like, I want to go. But it's cold too. So anyway, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Last time we recorded, I was literally sitting here in a bikini top, and I was
sweating. I had
sweat dripping off my body. And today, I'm literally sitting within inches of a space heater that just burnt my arm, and I'm wearing I have a hood. I'm like bundled up to the gills, and that's Texas for you. So
it's just cold as heck in Idaho. So I mean, in
I think we've established that you live in Idaho, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, there's enough cities that I think you're okay.
I'm okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say. Probably not. We can talk about it on Creeping Up. So thanks for listening, everybody. It has been real. We've been creeping it real. And I love you. Okay.
Peace out.
Check you on the flip side.
Bye.
Okay, creep it real, everybody. Bye.
Bye.